It's great to welcome back to the program Steve Schmidt, renowned American political strategist, commentator, founder of The Warning, a popular newsletter, podcast, and YouTube channel. Steve, it's so great to have you on again, and it's really a perfect time for it now in the middle of the DNC. You know, there was so much of this demand, seemingly, from some Trump supporters that Biden must drop out. He can't possibly do this, and it's just not fair. And then he steps aside, and it seems as though they were completely unprepared to actually run against Kamala Harris now, as most of the attack lines have been flailing personal attacks. How do you see it? Were they actually prepared to run against someone other than Joe Biden?
Obviously not. There's an old saying in the Marine Corps, prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. And the Trump campaign didn't get the memo. And part of the reason is a lack of imagination. There are lots of things that explain why we are where we are as a country, because people who should have been able to see what was coming down the railroad tracks weren't able to. Sometimes that's from a lack of imagination. So it never crossed the Trump mind. It's an impossibility that Trump would ever do what Biden did, which was to subordinate his ambition, which, let's face it, is substantial. You don't become the president of the United States without substantial ambition, ego, grit, determination, all of these things in your character. And Joe Biden gave it up. He made an assessment. I think it could have happened sooner, less publicly, in a less ugly manner than it went down. But in the end, I think what you see last night is a genuine affection for the guy, for the man. And he is profoundly different than Trump. And when he did something, not only that they weren't prepared for, but they couldn't conceive of, they were caught as flat-footed as you could be. And the other thing about it is, people say, hey, we're surprised by this. No one should be surprised if you can read a poll, because what the polls said, all of them, is the American people don't want this. They were screaming it. You had high watermarks of 80% of the country saying don't want it. And so the second they got the thing that they wanted, which was not what the two parties were offering, and that the leadership of the two parties were offering, and they stepped off that spring, it shot Kamala Harris up like a rocket ship, because the demand for change out of this era is so intense. And it's
I'm
great to.
curious, Steve, your thought on, we spoke to Tim Miller last week, and he had a long list of criticisms of how Trump has been going after Kamala Harris. I'm curious, what do you think is the most effective approach for Kamala Harris to go after Trump, in the sense of, one of the most memorable lines last night at the DNC maybe was UAW's Sean Fain talking about Trump as a scab. Jasmine Crockett talked about how he has a rap sheet instead of a resume. And what approach would you take in terms of the best ways to get new voters on your side for going after Trump at this stage of the campaign?
Well, let's take that question apart into a couple different components. There's a fundamental strategic construct in this race that tells you who's winning and who's losing at any given moment. Whomever the race is about is losing, right? So the race was about Donald Trump all the way through 2016 until James Comey's intervention makes it about Secretary Clinton, and she loses very narrowly. 2020, the race was about Trump. It was about his incompetence. It was about his incapacity. It was about his chaos, and he lost. The race had become about Biden, who literally had to withdraw from it. Kamala Harris has made the race about Trump again. And the way you engage Trump is by laughter, by humiliation. You have to treat Trump and meet Trump really like you do with all people where they are. And Trump's a bully. And so that bully cannot be accommodated. That bully has to be constantly confronted. And the truth of the matter is, when you're talking about the people wearing the bandages on their ear, when you're talking about the people walking around with the JD Vance sperm cup, right, for family planning, it's weird. It's weird. And it's been weird for a long time. There is a Star Wars creature cantina of weirdos around Donald Trump on the Mar-a-Lago porch that are spectacularly unfit by every conceivable measurement that we used as a society to weed out who should be in charge of life and death matters and situations, until very recently, that have a demand for political power. And so what the Democrats with Harris have done is make a subtle change. Democracy doesn't mean a lot to 40% of the country that has $400 cash available for an emergency. The 27-year-old Black woman who is handcuffed, put into a police car and charged with desecration of a corpse because she had a miscarriage in Ohio, I'm not sure that democracy is something that she really appreciates, but freedom is. The American Revolution wasn't fought over democracy. It was fought over liberty. It was fought over freedom. It was fought over control. Hey, you can't cut down these pine trees because they belong to the king, and the king gets all the best trees. Or 100 other different examples. And what you see the Harris Democratic Party doing is framing the race around an issue that everyone in the country gets at an intuitive level. Because if there's any national character, it's deeply based in don't tell me what to fucking do, right? And we are all at some level descendants of people that at their first moment of opportunity, whether it was upon arrival in the country or upon emancipation within the country, or at the end of the Great Migration from the apartheid states in the American South, as soon as Americans are able, all Americans who have come from somewhere, someplace, where someone imposed on them what they should think, what they should believe, what they should read, what they can't read, what they can see, what they can't see. The allure of America is freedom. And it's an easy concept to understand. And Kamala Harris has made that switch on the tracks very, very seamlessly, with great subtlety, but great impact. And I thought the framing of all of this, particularly Secretary Clinton, for the first time in a long time, offering a vision into the future of where we ought to be headed and going. So her speech last night, with all respect to the president, is the one going to be remembered as the historic speech.
When you look at the possibility of November as an inflection point with regard to Magga's role in the Republican Party, would you assess this as, if Trump loses, that's definitely the end of Trump's political ambitions, and maybe even of MAGA, versus if Trump wins, we now be maybe looking at a MAGA mold candidate in 2028? Like, are the stakes that high?
I think that we have several hurdles between election and inauguration that you can't take for granted. And the first thing that's going to happen, um, unless it is a landslide election, and we haven't had a legitimate landslide in the country since '96. It's been a long time. Um, any close election, Trump will dispute, and there will be tens and scores of tens of millions of Americans who will fall for the lie, and there will be scores of companies making billions in profit who will push it like they have in the past, and there will be foreign governments creating all sorts of social media chaos. So what happens? The first thing you appreciate about Trump, if you just assess this by the numbers, you take out all the emotion, all the nonsense. I mean, Trump has been a disaster electorally for Republicans. Yet, he's one of three people who are not FDR who were nominated by their party three times. William Jennings Bryan, Henry Clay, and Donald Trump. If they lose, who is the person that will challenge Donald Trump for the throne? Will there be anybody? Thus
You
far,
mean now for 2028, Steve?
2028. If Donald Trump says, I want it, he controls the party. So I don't know that Donald Trump isn't the nominee in 4 years.
Wow.
Because there has to be an intercessory event, right? There has to be an intercession. Is it Nikki Haley who steps forward and said, I tried to tell you so? Does Chris Christie have the possibility of affinity? Who is the Bill Clinton of the Republican Party at that moment who wasn't part of this, who isn't indicted by their cynicism, who doesn't have it stamped on their forehead, right? Who can credibly say, hey, let's move on. Who is that person? And who is the
so are you
person
saying, Steve,
that
that you
makes
think
the run at Trump?
it's a plausible scenario if Trump loses that he'll say at 82 or 83, I want to be the nominee again for a presidential term, at the end of which he would be 87 or 88 or however old he would be? You think that's a possibility?
I think that one of the realities of a political campaign, right? A political party. Political parties exist in two states. They're expanding or they're retracting.
Yes.
And the MAGA party is a retracting, not an expanding party.
I agree.
There's a physics to this. And the physics is when a political party gets smaller, it gets hotter, it gets denser, and more extreme, like a collapsing star, until it collapses into itself in a black hole. There are markers for any party that has an authoritarian bent. And one of them is an intolerance for dissent expressed by the purge. So the MAGA party is very explicit. You're with us. The old Ronald Reagan formulation was, somebody who's with me 80% of the time and against me 20% of the time is not my political opponent. They're my strong ally. But the proposition with MAGA on the table is obedience. And the obedience is a requirement that if Trump says that's an AI-generated crowd, it must be an AI-generated crowd. If I lost the election, I lost the election, right? And so the use of authority, power, to define what is true, and a requirement for membership, really, that all you have to do, right, to be a MAGA in good standing is to submit your agency and the sovereignty that if Trump asserts through Sean Spicer that The picture you're looking at that shows the bigger crowd, it's just like Winston in 1984, right? If they say it's smaller, even if your eyes assert it's bigger, it's smaller. And that's always been a hallmark of Trumpism, right?
Yeah, well, it's a very cult-like trait that you don't necessarily have to believe it, but you have to say you believe it.
They're all authoritarian structures impose a gravity where what am I allowed to think? What can I say? What's the boundary? And so I grew up in New Jersey. Donald Trump has been ever present culturally around me in my life, on the news, Art of the Deal, the book, since I was 11 or 12 years old. The fact that he became president and people think that he is a successful businessman has always astonished me. Yet, for 9 years, you watch this after the insurrection, the rehabilitation by Kevin McCarthy, the wholesale declarations of no more Trump, then complete fidelity to Trump. So if you haven't crossed the magic whatever line with regard to no more, I'm skeptical that another loss, though it would seem obvious, would traverse that line. Does it? If he still wants it? Because he controls the party apparatus, lock, stock, and barrel. He has the capacity to raise money, and there's nobody that I see within the party who's tough enough to go toe-to-toe with him and to call him out as he deserves to be called out.
Steve, last thing I want to ask you about, in the 70-something days between now and the election, short of a candidate, dying or becoming incapacitated, what are the sorts of things that could really impact polling and the race? We have one or more debates coming. Conventional wisdom is the debates don't matter. The June 27th debate certainly seemed to change the dynamics of the campaign. What sorts of events, what sorts of things could really shake the dynamics up of this campaign?
It's like one of the funny things, having been involved in politics, through a couple of presidential campaigns, won one at the, lost one, the years at NBC covering them. People say things and you repeat them and conventional wisdom gets formed, including like really dumb things like the debate don't matter.
Right.
Even after the aftermath of a debate that historically changed the entire trajectory of the election. So this debate will be the most watched political event, bar none, in American history. Fall debates have Super Bowl size audiences, and this is going to be up there and then some. This will be the most watched. And she is smarter than Donald Trump. She is tough. And he's going to have his hands full in that debate. When we look at the election and we look at the ballot initiatives where abortion is on the ballot.
Yep.
And you look at, and one of the blind spots of Democrats was, hey, young people are with us. We're with Biden. And I'm talking to my kids, and my kids are showing me what's on on TikTok. And brutal. And it doesn't look like that anymore. It's brutal for Trump. So no one has a handle right now on what the electorate is going to be. We're in a kinetic moment, have been for a month. She's going to come out of this with a real head of steam, whatever the bounce may be. Right, let's call it 8 points. Let's say she comes out of this up 9. And you can see polls where she will have a lead that big. But that will fall back by half within 2 weeks. And there will be a deceleration that's a natural part of the rhythm right through this Labor Day weekend, and then kind of a stasis in the race until the debate. And within that debate, you have millions of people who have a first impression of Kamala Harris that is essentially, I like Kamala Harris. I like what I see. I didn't know her. Whatever my impression of her was, her performance is clearly different. If what you knew about Kamala Harris was that she wasn't very good at the political part of being vice president, she seems like really good at politics to me, right? And to most people that are out there. So what does she believe philosophically? How does she see life? How did she end up here? What is her vision to lead the world? So when you look at her speech, I've said for months that I've hoped that they've read many, many times Peggy Noonan's great speech written for George Herbert Walker Bush in 41. And Peggy Noonan just talked about this in the Wall Street Journal. That's one of the best convention speeches ever written. And Kamala Harris needs a speech like that. You had George Bush, who was 19 years old, was the youngest fighter pilot in the U.S. Navy. Time magazine puts him on the cover. It says the wimp factor. I mean, imagine that. You were literally, when you were 19, right? You're a naval combat fighter pilot, the youngest in the Navy, shot down in constant combat. You're to be lambasted as a wimp. And that's the perception of you. So she has a blank slate. You have this energy in the country. The people desperately want to move on from all of this. Can she handle a dangerous world? And this speech and the debate are all part of the testing grounds. And then there will be events that transpire in the fall that will shape the outcome of this election that have not yet happened. And so the idea that President Biden is off the stage, he's the commander in chief. He's not off the stage. There is a tremendous amount of swirling dynamics, and all of it is overshadowed by a guy after already doing it. So it's not speculative anymore about, I can't lose the election. So once again, when he does it, tell me who's the group of people, because Liz Cheney and Adam Kitzinger aren't around anymore, who are going to stand up and be like, not this time. Lindsey Graham's going to do that? Who's going to do that? And so his hold over the party, I don't think slips away on election night. I think there's a pain involved in this that is very, very deep. And it's going to take a long time for there really to be a reckoning around the cynicism. And the Democrats, and I should say this, Democrats, when they insisted, some Democrats in the weeks after the debate, and there's a big difference between the parties, that, hey, no issue here. That was the great danger of that argument. They become them because they have gaslit the country for 9 years. And when it all goes down and the ship's not there, so to speak, on the water, and everyone's in it, trying to scramble into a lifeboat to harness their careers, we'll see. And remember, Kamala Harris gets elected, likely to be a solid Republican year and 2 years in that midterm election. So what does that look like? Is it a manifestation of extreme craziness, right, that just propels forward like a scene in Braveheart, right? Or, right, is it something that starts to be more thoughtful more intellectualized again, and that resembles the hallmarks of the loyal opposition. I want to say one last thing. As much as people think, and think correctly, that this will be an ugly campaign, I don't think they have any idea. We're about to see 76 days of racial malice, innuendos, venom, and ugliness play out that worsens and gets cheaper and more disgusting and dirtier every day as MAGA continues to have downward pressure on it. And you see Donald Trump's disorientation around how to hit her manifesting itself in the severity and really the obvious innuendos of the remarks. And it will be a terrible fall in that regard.
I think that seems increasingly clear. Yeah. Steve Schmidt, American political strategist, commentator, founder of The Warning. Steve, always great speaking to you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Dave.